Welcome to Dark Ages Unveiled, where the past drifts slowly and curiosity is lulled by the sound of the tide. Tonight, we won't dive into the modern ocean filled with whales and coral reefs. Instead, we'll descend into a far older sea, one that shimmered under the light of a different sun, where no human eyes had ever seen, and where true dragons once ruled the water. Long before humankind took its first breath, the oceans were home to giants. Mosasaurs, the apex predator of the dinosaur age, Plesiosaurs, the elegant long-necked phantom that gave rise to the legend of Loch Ness, Ichthyosaurs, the sleek ancestor of whales, with eyes as large as worlds, Deinosuchus, a monstrous crocodile that could crush the bones of dinosaurs, and Archelon, a turtle so vast it drifted through the sea like a floating island of silence. When dinosaurs thundered across the land, the oceans were their quiet reflection, vast, shimmering, and filled with creatures just as powerful. Down there, time moved differently. There was no day, no night, only light that fell through the waves in slow motion, like liquid glass. And in that stillness, the ocean held its breath, watching. Imagine yourself drifting in that ancient water. The world above is gone, only blue surrounds you. Dust from the birth of planets floats past your hands like stars under the surface. Something enormous glides above, its shadow rippling across your chest. It's not a dream, it's a memory, a heartbeat left behind by the earth itself. For the next 2 hours, we will follow the traces of these sea reptiles, the rulers of the Jurassic and Cretaceous oceans. Their bones are more than fossils. They are stories of evolution, of beauty wrapped in brutality, and of survival written in silence. So that if you're listening tonight under the warm glow of a lamp or the soft tapping of rain outside your window, let yourself drift, inhale slowly. Let the air feel heavy, like the weight of the deep sea pressing around you. The ocean is opening, it's waiting for you to remember what it once was. And if you'd like, tell me, where are you listening from tonight? A city filled with lights? A quiet room somewhere by the sea? Leave a small lantern in the comments below so the ancient ocean knows you're here. Awake within its dream. Now, take a breath. We begin our descent into prehistory. The water grows colder, the light fades, and the giants stir beneath. After the great extinction that ended the Permian period, the largest catastrophe life had ever known, silence ruled the world. Nearly 90% of all species had vanished. Coral reefs crumbled. Seas turned into stagnant plains of ash and acid. For millions of years, the ocean was a graveyard, shimmering faintly under a dying sun. But as it has always done, life returned, quietly, patiently, determined to rebuild from the ruins. From this emptiness came the architects of a new era, the reptiles. Freed from the competition of what had perished, they began to spread across the land, the air, and most hauntingly, the sea. The Triassic period was their experiment. By the Jurassic, they had become emperors of an ocean reborn. The waters of that age were warmer, richer in minerals, and thick with plankton. The perfect soup for evolution's next masterpiece. No whales, no sharks as we know them, no mammals. The seas of the Mesozoic were different, alien, dreamlike. The continents themselves were rearranged, closer together, forming shallow inland seas that shimmered in gold and green. Gentle tides rolled across coastlines that no human foot would ever walk. The air was thick with carbon dioxide, the temperature steady and warm across the planet. There were no ice caps, no polar nights, just endless summer. And under that eternal sun, the reptiles of the sea were born. Imagine standing on the shore of that ancient ocean. You would see nothing familiar. The waves were slower, heavier, as if the water itself remembered fire. Strange ammonites drifted like floating spirals of stone. Long-necked creatures glided near the surface, their heads darting like swans chasing ghosts. Every few moments a shadow the size of a house passed below, silent as a heartbeat. The world was vast and yet alive with tension, the calm before every hunt. In this place, survival didn't depend on strength alone. It depended on adaptation, on who could learn to breathe within change itself. Reptiles that once crawled on land began to chase fish along the shore. Over generations, their legs became flippers. Their lungs grew stronger, their bodies flattened, streamlined by the push of the tide. Scales gave way to smooth, leathery skin that cut through water like silk. And one by one the ocean claimed them. transforming cold-blooded wanderers into graceful predators of the deep. The first of these was the ichthyosaur. Emerging around 250 million years ago, it was a glimpse into evolution's imagination. Its body mirrored that of a dolphin, though it shared no ancestry. It breathed air like a reptile, gave birth to live young, and swam faster than any creature of its time. Its enormous eyes, some larger than a human head, allowed it to see in darkness, its spine curved with power, moving in elegant S-shaped waves. When it breached the surface to breathe, the sunlight glistened off its wet skin like quicksilver. It was not only alive, it was poetry in motion. But the ichthyosaur was just the beginning. By the Jurassic period, 200 million years ago, other reptiles had joined the deep. Some took to the surface, gliding and snapping at schools of fish. Others sank into the depths, their lungs adjusting to the crushing pressure of the seafloor. The most majestic of them all, the Plesiosaurs, evolved bodies unlike anything before or since. Their necks stretched impossibly long, allowing them to strike from a distance while their flippers churned in a perfect rhythm of symmetry. Watching them move was like watching a ballet performed in silence, slow, deliberate, eternal. Meanwhile, in shallower waters, new monsters stirred. The Mosasaurs, descendants of land-dwelling lizards, began their transformation. They would not appear until much later, near the end of the Cretaceous period, but the seeds of their lineage were already in motion. Their ancestors crept along beaches, hunting small prey. As tides rose and fell over the centuries, they learned to hold their breath longer, to swim further until the ocean itself became home. When the Mosasaurs finally arrived, they would claim the crown as the ocean's ultimate hunters. The world of that time was one of balance, but also of constant hunger. Everything was predator and prey. The seas shimmered with life. Ammonites, belemnites, early forms of squid, and great schools of bony fish that glinted like liquid mirrors. But beneath that glittering surface, shadows waited. The reptiles hunted not for sport, but for survival, for the right to exist in a world that demanded perfection. Let's step closer into that world. Picture the sky above an ancient shoreline. Volcanoes rumble in the distance, feeding the air with ash and sulfur. The ocean is tinted with green and gold, alive with microorganisms so dense they turn the water opaque. In the shallows, small reptiles bask on rocks, their bodies half submerged. They slip into the water without a sound, vanishing into the liquid world that will soon belong to their kind. The water feels warm, almost heavy, pressing gently against their scales. They move through it awkwardly at first, paddling like children learning to walk. But generation after generation, something changes. Fins replace claws. Eyes adapt to refracted light. Their ribs expand to hold air longer, and tails lengthen to propel them forward. It is slow, invisible progress. Evolution measured not in centuries, but in silence. Eventually one creature stays omad below longer than the rest. It learns that down there the rules are different. Gravity disappears, sound travels like whispers, and the only light is what filters down from the sky like shards of glass. This is where dominance begins. The ocean rewards those who adapt. And in that reward lies the birth of giants. Why giants? Why did the ocean give rise to creatures so vast? Part of the answer lies in physics. The buoyancy of water supports massive bodies that would collapse on land. A creature weighing 20 tons can glide with grace in the sea, suspended by the invisible hand of buoyancy. But there's also something deeper, a biological poetry at work. Larger bodies retain heat more efficiently, allowing reptiles to maintain their strength in the cooler depths. Their size gives them power, endurance, and dominance. In the silence of the sea, being enormous was not a burden. It was the key to survival. But gigantism came with its own price. Massive creatures needed massive meals. Their hearts beat slowly, but their hunger was endless. Many species evolved astonishing hunting strategies. Some stalked their prey from below, blending into the lightless water. Others struck upward, jaws opening like doors to another world. A single bite from a mosasaur could crush the shell of a turtle or tear a plesiosaur in half. The ocean was a cathedral of violence conducted in whispers and shadows. Still there was beauty in it, an order older than words. Every predator was balanced by the abundance it depended on. Every death fed the next generation. Even in the brutality, there was peace. the kind of peace that comes when the world runs exactly as it must. Above the waves, the continents continued to drift. The breakup of Pangaea carved new coastlines, creating long, shallow seas that became nurseries for marine life. Coral reefs began to reappear, glowing with colour. On the land, dinosaurs grew taller and heavier, but beneath them, in the silence of the ocean, another empire thrived unseen. If you could dive into those waters, you would enter a different planet. Sunlight would fade after only a few meters. The colour blue would deepen into endless black. You might see flashes of silver, schools of fish scattering from something larger moving below. Faint vibration would reach your chest before your ears. Then from the darkness, the shape would emerge, a shadow too vast to comprehend, gliding silently through the void. Its eyes would reflect the last light from above, like two moons adrift under the sea. And as it passed, the water would move with it, a slow, heavy pulse, like the heartbeat of the world itself. This was the age when reptiles ruled not by chance but by design. They had become the architects of evolution's second ocean. Every movement they made carved new possibilities into life's blueprints. Their dominance lasted for over 130 million years, longer than mammals have existed today. In that vastness of time, civilizations could have risen and fallen 1,000 times before their reign ended. Yet for the ocean, there was no concept of end. There was only change, slow, patient, inevitable. And as the Mesozoic seas matured, so too did their rulers. The ichthyosaurs refined their bodies into perfect machines for speed. The plesiosaurs evolved longer necks and broader flippers, turning every movement into poetry. Early forms of the Mosasaurs began to dominate the coastlines, competing with sharks and crocodiles for territory. Even Deinosuchus, the monstrous ancestor of modern crocodiles, found its niche along the deltas and estuaries, where salt water met the mud of the land. Each species was a verse in the same song, a hymn to the ocean's power to create and destroy. But life was never static. Beneath the rhythm of the tides, change was always stirring. Volcanic eruptions altered the chemistry of the water, meteoric dust darkened the skies. Temperatures rose and fell in long, slow pulses. Entire ecosystems shifted like breathing lungs, and through it all, the reptiles endured, reshaping themselves again and again to fit the sea's demands. To understand them is to understand resilience. These creatures didn't merely survive extinction, they were born from it. They are proof that destruction is not the end of life, but its beginning in disguise. When the world burned, they crawled into the ashes and built something new. The ocean they ruled was not the enemy we imagine today, not cold or hostile. It was alive, nurturing, and immense beyond comprehension. Its opulence was not emptiness, but abundance. Its darkness, not fear, but protection. The sea of the Mesozoic was the Earth's memory, a reminder that from death comes rebirth, from ruin comes evolution. And as we float here, listening to the hum of time, we can almost hear it, the slow pulse of that ancient water echoing through the ages. Every wave we see today carries its rhythm. Every current that touches the shore still moves to the same beat that once rocked the bodies of Mosasaurs and Plesiosaurs. The ocean remembers everything. It remembers when reptiles rose from the land to claim its depths. It remembers the warmth that wrapped the planet in endless dusk. It remembers the shimmer of scales, the hiss of breath beneath the waves, and the heavy silence after the hunt. And in that memory lies a truth we often forget, that we too are made of the sea. Our blood still tastes of salt. Our hearts still echo the rhythm of tides. When we sleep, our dreams return to water, tracing the same movements as the creatures that once ruled the blue. So as you listen now, let the sound of the ocean, whether real or imagined, fill the room around you. Let it settle over you like a warm blanket of time. The past is not gone. It's just resting, breathing softly beneath the surface. In the next part of our journey, we'll meet the ocean's most formidable ruler, the Mosasaur, the serpent lord of the deep, whose jaws ended the age of giants and whose silence still echoes in the black heart of the sea. For now, drift. The ancient waves are carrying you through history, through evolution, extinction, and rebirth, into the heart of the reptilian ocean, where everything that once lived still breathes in the dark. The waves part with a whisper. Something moves beneath the surface, slow, deliberate, immense. For a moment, there's only the ripple of light playing across the water. Then the shadow appears. It stretches for nearly 50 feet, long and sinuous, moving with the precision of a creature built entirely for dominance. Two massive eyes scan the gloom, rows of teeth gleam like ivory blades. You're looking at Mosasaurus hoffmanni, the undisputed emperor of the late Cretaceous seas, and perhaps the most terrifying reptile to ever breathe air. The mosasaur was not born of the deep. Its story began on land in the lineage of small monitor lizards that once crept through tropical forests. They were opportunistic, clever, and always hungry. Some ventured into the shallows, chasing fish through tide pools and estuaries. Over millions of years they evolved longer bodies, flattened tails, and limbs that transformed into fins. Their lungs adapted for longer dives, their eyes adjusted to refracted light, and their senses sharpened in the shifting currents. Evolution sculpted them with brutal patience, until one day they no longer needed the shore at all. By the time the mosasaur appeared, around 98 million years ago, the ocean was already a kingdom of giants, yet nothing could challenge it. Not sharks, not plesiosaurs, not even the last of the ichthyosaurs, who had already begun to fade into extinction. The mosasaur's reign marked the final chapter in the saga of reptilian ocean lords, a crescendo of power before the great silence to come. Imagine a body built for speed and destruction, a muscular torso tapering into a tail shaped like a scythe, capable of propelling the beast through water at nearly 30 miles per hour. 4 massive flippers allowed it to maneuver with the precision of a submarine. Its jaws, lined with nearly 100 razor-edged teeth, could crush bone and shell alike. Each bite generated enough force to shatter a human skull 10 times over. But it wasn't just strength that made the mosasaur a nightmare. It was intelligence. Its brain, though not large by mammalian standards, was sophisticated enough to plan ambushes. Fossil evidence suggests it hunted with strategy, waiting beneath schools of fish or near coral shelves where prey would be cornered. Some remains even show healed bite marks, proof that mosasaurs fought each other for territory, mates, or dominance. They weren't mindless predators. They were calculating rulers of the abyss. The world they ruled was no tranquil paradise. It was a realm of endless twilight, where sunlight filtered down in fractured beams and entire food chains rose and fell in silence. The Cretaceous seas teemed with life, squid-like ammonites with coiled shells, giant turtles, primitive sharks, and massive fish like Xiphactinus, which could swallow a smaller creature whole. Yet wherever life gathered, the mosasaur follows. Picture it gliding beneath the surface, every movement perfectly synchronized. The water bends around its body as if it were silk. A school of fish scatters. A lone turtle flaps upward, slow and unaware. In an instant, the mosasaur accelerates. Its tail lashes once, twice. The ocean compresses with soundless force and the jaws open. The turtle disappears in a burst of bubbles and blood. A heartbeat later, the sea is calm again. No roar, no cry, only silence. The hunt is over. What made the mosasaur unique was not just its brutality, but its adaptability. Fossils have been found across every continent, from Europe to North America, from Africa to Antarctica. It thrived in tropical lagoons, open seas, and even shallow inland waterways that once covered what is now Kansas. Each species specialized for its habitat. Some grew shorter and heavier, perfect for crushing shellfish. Others stretched longer and sleeker, built for pursuit in the open blue. One remarkable specimen, Prognathodon, had teeth designed to crush ammonite shells like porcelain. Another, Tylosaurus, was the embodiment of aggression, its skull over 5 feet long, built to ram prey before striking. These variations prove the same truth nature has always whispered. Survival belongs to those who change. Yet in the stillness of their power, there was elegance. Mosasaurs didn't thrash like crocodiles, they glided. Their tails moved in smooth waves, their flippers barely rippling the water. Their hunting style resembled a ballet of precision, the calculated approach, the final surge, the sharp twist of the neck. Some scientists even believe they used bursts of speed to launch themselves partly out of the water, like killer whales today. They were not beasts, they were symphonies of muscle and instinct. If you could follow one in its daily rhythm, you'd witness the quiet order of the ancient sea. At dawn it would rise near the surface to breathe, exhaling a thin mist of air before sinking back into the depths. It would patrol its territory, sensing vibrations through the pressure changes of the water. A flick of its tongue could taste chemical traces of blood miles away. Then, when hunger struck, it would move, fast, silent, unstoppable. The sea itself seemed to bend around its will. At times, mosasaurs would attack prey larger than themselves. Fossil records show evidence of them devouring plesiosaurs and even other mosasaurs. They were both hunters and cannibals, apex predators at war with their own kind. Perhaps that's why their eyes evolved such precision vision. In the murky depths, distinguishing friend from foe was a matter of survival, and yet, for all their ferocity, they were not immune to fear. The Cretaceous seas held other dangers: massive sharks, changing currents, and the slow shift of climate that began to alter the ocean's chemistry. Every victory in nature is temporary. Even giants must one day bow to change. But before their fall, the mosasaurs achieved something profound. They became masters of two worlds. They were reptiles that breathed air, yet lived entirely in the sea. They gave birth to live young, nurturing them in the water just as whales would do tens of millions of years later. In this, they were evolutionary bridges, proof that the boundary between land and ocean was never as solid as it seems. Their young were born ready to swim, miniature versions of their titanic parents. Paleontologists have found fossilized skeletons of juveniles within larger individuals, confirming this behavior. Imagine a newborn mosasaur entering the world, its first breath breaking the surface, its first dive plunging into lightless water, its instinct already written in its blood. From the first heartbeat, it belonged to the deep. The mosasaur's story is also the story of human curiosity. In the late 18th century, long before the word dinosaur even existed, workers in a limestone quarry near Maastricht in the Netherlands unearthed an enormous skull embedded in stone. Its jaws were lined with rows of sharp teeth, its eyes set in a predatory glare frozen by time. Scientists and clergy alike argued over what it was: a crocodile, a whale, a dragon from scripture. It wasn't until much later that the truth emerged. This was the first mosasaur ever discovered, Mosasaurus hoffmanii, named after the river Maas nearby. That fossil became a spark that helped ignite paleontology as a science. It showed for the first time that entire worlds had existed before humanity, that there were ages of giants long buried beneath our feet. The mosasaur wasn't just a predator, it was a revelation. It forced us to confront time itself, to realize that life on Earth is not fixed, but fluid, reshaping endlessly like the sea. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture the mosasaur not as a monster, but as a reminder. It was a creature sculpted by survival, honed by evolution's patient hands, and extinguished by forces it could never understand. Its world was warm and shimmering, its hunger endless, its reign absolute. Yet when the final meteor struck and the skies turned black, its kingdom vanished overnight. The ocean cooled, the food chain collapsed, and the silence returned once more. But before that final darkness, imagine one last scene. The sun sets over a Cretaceous lagoon. The air is heavy with salt and the scent of kelp. A massive shadow drifts just below the surface, its shin rippling in gold light. Small fish scatter before it. The creature slows, rising slowly toward the glow of the dying day. Its nostrils break the surface. A thin mist of air escapes. For a heartbeat, it is the only sound in the world. The water stills again. Then, without a splash, it sinks back into the depths, into the eternal night of its dominion. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it. The slow, rhythmic sound of water pushing aside. The deep exhale of something ancient, older than the stars reflected above. It is the breath of the mosasaur, echoing not just through the ocean, but through the memory of the Earth itself. Scientists believe mosasaurs had lungs larger than any reptile that came before them, capable of holding air for long dives. Their bones were dense, allowing them to glide without floating uncontrollably upward. Their blood circulated warmth to vital organs, giving them an advantage over the cold-blooded fish they hunted. In many ways, they were proto-warm-blooded, balancing between two evolutionary worlds. They lived fast, died young, and left bones that turned to stone. Yet every fossil, every tooth, every rib we uncover tells a fragment of their song. A song of hunger, motion, and adaptation, a hymn to the art of survival written in the dialect of water. Some researchers even speculate that mosasaurs hunted in coordinated groups, much like modern dolphins or killer whales. Imagine that, a pod of 20-ton predators working together, circling prey, driving it toward the shallows. A flash of white bellies, a shimmer of tails, and then silence. Whether they truly cooperated or not, the image lingers, a testament to nature's ability to repeat patterns through time. Others may have been solitary, roaming vast territories alone. Fossils of bite marks on their skulls suggest brutal fights, perhaps between rival males. Their power was both a blessing and a curse. In the end, they were prisoners of their own perfection, so specialized, so dominant, that when the world changed, they could not follow. The end came suddenly. 66 million years ago, a meteor struck near what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. The sky burned, the oceans boiled, waves higher than mountains raced across the globe. In days, the sunlight disappeared behind clouds of ash. The temperature plummeted, photosynthesis stopped, plankton died, and the food chain collapsed from its roots upward. For the mosasaur, the ocean turned from a kingdom to a coffin. Some may have survived for months, perhaps years, feeding on what remained. But without the warmth and abundance that had sustained them, their kind vanished. Their bones sank slowly to the seabed, where silt wrapped them like shrouds. The silence that followed was absolute, and yet even in extinction they endured in another form, memory. The ocean does not forget its giants. Every ripple, every current, every echo in the deep still carries their story. When you stand on a beach today and look out at the endless horizon, you are staring into their graves and their legacy. Somewhere below, among the bones of the continental shelves, the mosasaur sleeps. Its teeth gleam faintly in the darkness, and its silhouette lingers in the mind of the sea. It is not gone. It is simply waiting for us to remember that the ocean was once ruled by reptiles that breathed air, gave birth in the depths, and hunted with the grace of silence. Waiting for us to understand that even the greatest predator can vanish in a moment, swallowed by the same water that once crowned it king. So tonight, as you listen, imagine the shadow of the mosasaur passing beneath your thoughts, slow, immense, eternal. It doesn't see you and it doesn't need to. It is older than fear itself. Breathe with it. Drift with it. The sea remembers. And in its endless memory, the mosasaur still swims, forever tracing circles through the dark heart of time. The water is calm now. The storm of the mosasaur has passed. What remains is stillness. A mirror of blue stretching into infinity. Far above, sunlight ripples through the waves like ribbons of glass. Far below, shadows bloom and fade, and then, cutting through the silence, something moves. Slow. Fluid. Beautiful. A shape gliding like a question left unanswered. A long neck curls upward through the light. A small head, crowned with ancient eyes, breaks the surface and exhales softly. This is the Plesiosaur, the most mysterious of the sea reptiles. A creature so strange, so graceful, that even centuries after its extinction, people still whisper its name in connection with another legend, the monster of Loch Ness. But the Plesiosaur was no monster. It was one of evolution's most elegant designs, a contradiction that somehow worked, a short, barrel-shaped body, paired with a neck that could stretch up to 20 feet long. Its four massive flippers rotated in opposite rhythms, like the wings of an underwater bird. It didn't thrash or chase. It glided. It moved as if the ocean itself had decided to dance. Imagine it beneath you now. The sea around it glows with soft emerald light. Schools of fish scatter as it passes, their scales flashing silver like falling stars. Its body moves with unbroken rhythm, flippers circling in slow perfection, tail steady, head drifting in gentle arcs. The Plesiosaur doesn't hurry. It doesn't need to. It belongs entirely to the water. Its anatomy defied logic, even for scientists who study it today. That impossibly long neck contained as many as 76 vertebrae, each one shaped to provide both strength and flexibility. The head at the end was small, almost delicate, armed with thin, sharp teeth, perfect for snaring slippery prey. Paleontologists believe it used its neck like a living fishing line, holding its body still while the head darted forward to seize fish and squid. Others suggest it swam through schools of prey with its mouth open, snapping sideways like a heron skimming the surface. Whatever its method, it was precise. Plesiosaurs were not brutes. They were hunters of grace. They lived from the early Jurassic to the end of the Cretaceous, surviving over 30 million years, longer than many entire species of mammals have existed. Some reached lengths of 40 feet with weights of nearly 15 tons. Yet despite their bulk, They were silent navigators of the sea. Fossil evidence suggests they could dive deep, their lungs and bones adapted to the immense pressure of the depths. Others lingered near the surface, basking in warmth, using their long necks to scout for movement below. The ocean they ruled was unlike the one of the Mosasaur. Warmer, clearer, teeming with life. Coral gardens stretched for miles beneath the surface, and swarms of ammonites rose and fell like golden balloons. In that vibrant world, the Plesiosaur glided through time, an embodiment of serenity in an age of predators. Yet even serenity has its shadows. That neck, so elegant, was also its greatest vulnerability. One swift strike from a Mosasaur could sever it. A well-aimed bite from a shark could cripple it. To survive, the Plesiosaur depended not on armor or speed, but on stealth, on knowing how to blend into the sea's rhythm until it became invisible. It was a creature of patience. It waited. It watched. It trusted the quiet. In that sense, it wasn't just a reptile. It was a metaphor. Life adapting not through domination, but through stillness. In the chaos of the Cretaceous seas, where everything fought for supremacy, the Plesiosaur thrived by moving differently. Picture a world where light itself moves slowly, where the only sound is the gentle pulse of the current. In that world, the Plesiosaur drifts, body hidden in the blue, neck weaving through curtains of plankton. It senses vibration, the faint hum of a school of fish ahead. Its head tilts, eyes narrowing. Then, without warning, it lunges. The water folds around it, pressure and grace fused into one motion. A silver flash disappears into its jaws, and then it's gone again, leaving behind only a trail of quiet bubbles. Even its reproduction carried the signature of tranquility. For decades, scientists believed plesiosaurs laid eggs on land like turtles. But in 2011, a fossil from Kansas changed everything. A nearly complete skeleton of a pregnant Polycotylus latipinus, containing a single large embryo inside her ribs. It was proof that plesiosaurs gave birth to live young. They were fully marine creatures, no longer tied to the shore. Their young likely stayed close to their mothers for protection, learning the slow choreography of the sea from birth. A mother plesiosaur and her calf drifting together. It's a vision that reshapes how we imagine the ocean's past. Not only a place of predators and prey, but of kinship, of memory, of quiet endurance. The mystery of their long necks still captivates scientists. How could such a feature evolve and persist for millions of years? Some theories propose sexual selection. Perhaps longer necks made individuals more attractive to mates. Others suggest it was an ecological niche that no other predator could fill, a tool for reaching prey in tight spaces where larger hunters couldn't follow. Whatever the reason, it worked. For over 100 million years, the ocean accepted them as part of its design. And yet, something about the plesiosaur transcends science. Its shape, graceful, haunting, alien, lodged itself into human imagination long before we understood what fossils were. In 1823, when Mary Anning discovered the first nearly complete skeleton along the cliffs of Lyme Regis in England, the world was stunned. It was the first time people had seen such a creature, something that looked half like a snake, half like a whale, and entirely like a dream. Artists painted it emerging from foggy seas, writers gave it mythic form, and more than a century later, when sightings of a monster in Loch Ness began to circulate, many believed it must be a surviving plesiosaur, proof that somewhere, deep within the cold water of the Scottish Highlands, an ancient ghost still moved. Science, of course, tells a different story. No air-breathing reptile could survive unseen in a lake that small, especially one that freezes in winter. But the legend persists, and perhaps that's fitting, because the plesiosaur's real legacy isn't in bones, it's in imagination. It represents that part of us that still looks into dark water and wonders what might be watching back. Let's return for a moment to the age of its reign, the late Jurassic seas, warm and infinite. Picture dusk settling over the horizon. The air hums with insects and the scent of pine from distant forests. The ocean glows gold at its edges. A lone plesiosaur rises, its neck breaking the surface in a long, elegant arc. Droplets fall from its jaws like beads of light. It inhales, a slow, deliberate breath that stirs the air, and then sinks again, vanishing beneath the surface without a sound. That motion, that quiet disappearance, is what makes the plesiosaur unforgettable. It embodies the line between seen and unseen, between memory and myth. It's not difficult to imagine early sailors thousands of years ago glimpsing long shapes in the mist and feeling their hearts quicken. The sea has always hidden its history in motion. The Plesiosaur was that history given form. Fossil beds around the world tell us they were everywhere. Europe, North America, Australia, South America, even Antarctica. They survived in oceans both warm and cold, proving their resilience. Some species, like Elasmosaurus, grew to astonishing lengths, 45 feet of fluid grace, its neck alone stretching over half its body. Others, like Kronosaurus, took a darker turn, short-necked, muscular, and armed with massive jaws that could tear through armour and bone. These were the giants of the late Cretaceous, the cousins who turned the elegance of their ancestors into power. Yet even in that brutal lineage, the underlying beauty remained. Whether delicate or monstrous, the Plesiosaurs moved with the same rhythm, the rhythm of water itself. Their extinction came not from weakness, but from the same fate that ended the Mosasaurs and the great dinosaurs of the land, the impact. When the meteor struck and the skies turned black, the delicate web of life unravelled. Plankton died, fish disappeared, and predators found nothing left to hunt. One by one they sank, their bodies heavy with the weight of time, still. There's something comforting in knowing that their shape, long neck, 4 fins, small head, remains etched in the Earth's memory. Every time a diver glimpses a shadow below, every time a ripple disturbs still water, that ancient design stirs again in our minds. The Plesiosaur lives in the language of reflection and depth, in the instinct that tells us there's always something beneath. Perhaps that's why it became the symbol of the Loch Ness legend. The cold, misty waters of Scotland are a perfect echo chamber for the ghosts of the Cretaceous Sea. When people say they've seen Nessie, what they're truly seeing is a memory, a fragment of the ancient world projected onto the surface of our modern fears and hopes. Because deep down, we don't want the Plesiosaur to be gone. We want it to still glide through the dark, neck curving upward toward the moonlit surface. We want to believe that somewhere the past is still alive. And maybe, in a way, it is. Every creature that moves through water today, every seal, every whale, every dolphin, carries traces of the same story. The same need to breathe air, to glide through darkness, to live between two worlds. The Plesiosaur taught nature that such a balance was possible. Its body was evolution's experiment in grace. Its survival was proof that harmony could be a weapon. And its extinction, like all endings, was just another transformation. If you close your eyes, you can still feel it moving. The pull of its flippers through the water, the tension in that long, slender neck as it turns toward invisible prey, the soft rhythm of its breathing. It is the embodiment of tranquility in motion, the soundless heartbeat of an ocean that has never stopped remembering. Even now, when the wind brushes across the surface of a lake, when mist rolls over water at dawn, when something breaks the surface far away and leaves only widening ripples, you might feel it. The echo of the Plesiosaur's glide. It is the spirit of the sea's forgotten stillness, the reminder that not all power roars. Some power simply moves endlessly, beautifully, unseen. And so, as we leave the Plesiosaur behind, drifting once more into the deeper waters of prehistory, remember this: the ocean doesn't always favour the strong or the fast. Sometimes it favours the quiet, the patient, the ones who learn to move in harmony with its eternal pulse. For millions of years, that was the Plesiosaur's gift to the world, a lesson written not in blood but in grace. And though its bones now rest beneath layers of stone, its story still floats above them, luminous and eternal. Next, we'll follow another traveller of those same seas, the Ichthyosaur, a creature shaped like a dolphin, yet born from reptiles. The one who looked forward in time, becoming a prophecy of whales to come. But before we descend again, breathe deeply. Feel the calm spread through you. The Plesiosaur has left the water still, like glass, and beneath that stillness, the next dream of evolution is stirring. The ocean darkens. The last glimmer of sunlight fades through the surface, rippling like gold breaking into dust. In that fading glow, a new shape appears, a silhouette sleek and familiar, yet impossibly ancient. It glides effortlessly through the water, curved like a crescent moon, eyes wide as orbs of glass. For a moment, you might mistake it for a dolphin. But this creature swam the seas long before dolphins, or even whales, existed. This is the Ichthyosaur, the fish lizard, the ghostly bridge between two eras of life, the reptiles of the past and the mammals of the future. The Ichthyosaur was the sea's first true experiment in perfection. When evolution first sculpted its body, it stumbled upon a design so efficient, so elegant, that nature would use it again tens of millions of years later to create whales and dolphins. It was not merely a reptile, it was a prophecy written in flesh and water. The earliest ichthyosaurs appeared over 250 million years ago, in the aftermath of the Permian extinction. They were pioneers of recovery, among the first large predators to reclaim the oceans after the apocalypse that had nearly erased life itself. From small, awkward creatures crawling back into the shallows, they transformed into streamlined torpedoes of power, capable of diving deep, swimming fast, and living entirely in the sea. Imagine standing on the shores of a Triassic lagoon, 230 million years ago. The air is thick with heat and the smell of salt. You see something break the surface, a flash of silver skin, a spray of water, and then a powerful tail fin cutting a perfect arc through the waves. Beneath, a creature the size of a bus glides past, its body glinting like polished steel. The ichthyosaur moves with the precision of a machine, its long snout slicing the water, its fins rolling in perfect rhythm. It exhales once, just a whisper, and vanishes again into the blue. The ichthyosaur was the first marine reptile to achieve such mastery of motion. Its design was the ocean's geometry made flesh. Its tail fin, shaped like a crescent, generated thrust with each sweeping motion, propelling it faster than any creature of its time. Its eyes were enormous, larger than those of any animal in Earth's history, some measuring nearly a foot across. Those eyes were windows into the abyss, designed to see in darkness, to detect faint glimmers of prey even in the crushing depths. It hunted in the silence of deep time, moving like a silver thought through black water. Its prey was simple: fish, squid, and small reptiles. But its method was artistry. Using sonar-like precision, it would close in with measured patience, then strike in a blur. Its jaw snapped shut with terrifying accuracy, leaving no sound but a rush of bubbles. The ocean swallowed the moment whole. But to truly understand the ichthyosaur is to see how it blurred the boundaries between categories. It breathed air, yet never returned to land. It gave birth to live young, often tail first so the infant would not drown before surfacing. Fossilized mothers have been found frozen in the act of birth, their offspring halfway into the world, one of the most hauntingly intimate scenes ever captured in stone. It tells us this: they were not monsters. They were mothers, guardians of a lineage that spanned 150 million years. The ichthyosaur's rise were meteoric. By the Jurassic period, it had spread across the planet, thriving in warm, shallow seas from Europe to Asia to the Americas. Some species, like Temnodontosaurus, reached lengths of 40 feet and dominated the top of the food chain. Others, like Stenopterygius, were smaller but agile, darting through schools of fish like blades of light. They were the pulse of the ocean, perfectly attuned to its rhythm. And yet, there is something melancholy in their perfection, because perfection in nature is a fragile thing. It leaves no room for change. By the mid-Cretaceous, the ichthyosaurs had begun to vanish. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, their numbers dwindled. New predators emerged. Faster, stronger, more adaptable. The oceans cooled, the chemistry of the water shifted, their prey moved elsewhere, and their sleek bodies, built for a world that was fading, could not adjust. It is one of evolution's cruelest truths. The same design that once made you eternal can one day make you obsolete. But long before their fall, the ichthyosaurs ruled an ocean so alien it feels like mythology. The sunlight of those days pierced the sea in columns, illuminating forests of coral and drifting clouds of plankton. Enormous ammonites spiraled lazily through the water like jeweled galaxies. And weaving between them all were the ichthyosaurs, silver arcs of life gliding between time and eternity. Their skin shimmered in hues of blue-grey, their eyes wide and luminous. They were cold-blooded reptiles, yet some may have evolved partial warm-bloodedness to survive in colder depths, an evolutionary whisper of what would one day define whales. Scientists believe they could regulate their body temperature, an adaptation that allowed them to travel between warm shallows and dark abyss with ease. They were explorers before the concept of exploration even existed. Close your eyes. Imagine you're floating beside one. The water around you hums with silence. You can feel the faint vibrations of its heartbeat through the waves. It turns slightly, its massive eye meeting yours. For a fleeting second, you glimpse the reflection of sunlight moving across its iris. A world without humans, without sound, only motion and memory. Then, with a flick of its tail, it vanishes into the dark, leaving behind only the slow fade of its silhouette. The ichthyosaur's story is not just about biology, it's about destiny. It's about how life rehearses itself, how nature creates a masterpiece, loses it, and tries again in another form. Millions of years after the last ichthyosaur disappeared, mammals returned to the sea. Whales and dolphins evolved bodies strikingly similar to their reptilian ancestors. Streamlined torsos, dorsal fins, tail flukes. Even their method of giving birth mirrored that of the ichthyosaurs. It was as if evolution had opened an old sketchbook, flipped to a forgotten page, and whispered, "Let's try this again." We carry their echo even now. Every time a whale breaches the surface, every time a dolphin whistles through waves, the ocean remembers the shape that first defined its grace. The ichthyosaur was not lost, it was transmuted, reborn in the rhythm of the creatures that came after. Yet their extinction still lingers like an unfinished note. Around 90 million years ago, the last of them vanished. The reason remains partly a mystery. Fossil evidence suggests declining food sources and rising competition. Others point to volcanic activity altering global climate. But perhaps it was simpler. The ocean itself changed, and they, perfect as they were, could not. In 2016, scientists discovered the fossil of a giant ichthyosaur in the Swiss Alps, an unimaginable place for a sea creature. It had died in what was once a shallow ocean, later buried and lifted by tectonic forces into mountains. Its bones stretched over 65 feet long, among the largest reptiles ever found. Even in death it reached for the sky. There is poetry in that image, a creature of the deep entombed in stone at the roof of the world. It's as if the earth itself carried its memory upward, a monument to the ocean that once covered everything. The ichthyosaur's fossils tell another story too, one of art and humanism's fascination with the deep. In the 19th century, as scientists began unearthing their remains, artists struggled to capture their shape. Some depicted them as sea serpents, others imagined them as whales with reptilian faces. But even with our modern understanding, their presence still feels otherworldly, too perfect, too silent, too complete. What sets them apart is their emotionless serenity. Unlike the feral rage of the Mosasaur or the quiet caution of the Plesiosaur, the ichthyosaur feels peaceful. It doesn't stalk or lurk, it flows. It exists as though in meditation, content with its place in the endless cycle. Perhaps that's why their fossils often inspire a sense of calm rather than fear. The curvature of their bones, the smoothness of their jaws, the symmetry of their flippers, it all speaks of design beyond aggression. They are, in every sense, the embodiment of the ocean's patience. They remind us that evolution is not always loud. Sometimes it is subtle, deliberate, and kind. Imagine their migration across prehistoric oceans, thousands moving together in synchronized motion, their bodies catching light like mirrors. They surface in unison, inhale, and disappear again. From above, it would look like the heartbeat of the planet itself, a shimmering pulse travelling through endless blue. Now imagine their end. The sky dims, the water cools, food grows scarce, one by one they slow, the rhythm breaks, the ocean once full of motion begins to still, and in that stillness their silver bodies sink, their eyes closing for the last time. Yet even as they fall, they do not fight, they simply drift, graceful to the end. If the Mosasaur was the roar of power, and the Plesiosaur the whisper of mystery, then the ichthyosaur was the sigh of memory. Its story tells us that beauty does not need to conquer to endure, it simply needs to exist long enough to be remembered. And the earth remembers. In every mountain fossil, every stone shaped by time, the imprint of the ichthyosaur remains, a symbol of resilience, of evolution's artistry, of nature's capacity to find poetry even in extinction. Tonight, as you listen, let yourself drift with them. Imagine the feeling of being weightless in an ancient sea, surrounded by the ghosts of creatures that once ruled the deep with nothing but grace. Hear the quiet hum of their movement, the soundless beat of their tails. Let it slow your breath. Let it calm your thoughts, because the ichthyosaur's gift is not terror or awe, it is peace. The peace of a creature that found its place between worlds and never once looked back toward the land. And so, as we rise slowly from their depths, leaving behind their shadowed kingdom, the surface light grows brighter. Another ruler waits in the next tide, one that traded grace for brute strength, speed for ambush. The calm of the ichthyosaur gives way to something darker, heavier, more ancient. In the next chapter, the water will shatter again. The riverbanks will tremble. The jaws of Deinosuchus, the terror crocodile, will close around time itself. But for now, breathe. Let the last ripples of the ichthyosaur's wake fade into stillness. The ocean is silent again, and in that silence, somewhere beneath the layers of time, the first heartbeat of the next predator begins to sound. The light fades as we drift inland, though, away from the open ocean and into the murky, slow-moving waters of the prehistoric river deltas. The air is thick here, heavy with heat and the scent of rotting vegetation. Mosquitoes the size of dragonflies hum above the surface, and reeds bend under their own damp weight. The water barely moves. It is a mirror of green, broken only by the slow swirl of something vast beneath. For a long moment there is silence, then a ripple, and in that ripple time itself seems to shudder. From the depths rises a shape so familiar and yet so monstrous that the line between past and present blurs. A crocodilian, massive beyond belief. The snout alone is longer than a man. Its eyes, like two wet embers, break the surface. The water drains from its scales in slow cascades. This is Deinosuchus, the terrible crocodile, an ancient titan that once ruled the swamps and estuaries of North America 80 million years ago. At its full length, Deinosuchus stretched nearly 12 meters, longer than a city bus. Its jaw, armed with a conical teeth the size of bananas, could generate over 10 tons of bite force. That's enough to crush bone, shatter armor, and turn a dinosaur's leg into splinters. Yet despite that monstrous power, Deinosuchus was not a hunter of speed. It was a creature of patience, an embodiment of stillness so absolute it became lethal. It lived where land met water, where dinosaurs came to drink and the river whispered secrets only it could hear. Picture a warm afternoon along a Cretaceous riverbank. Herds of duck-billed dinosaurs, hadrosaurs, gather near the shallows, lowering their heads to drink. The air hums with insects, and the reeds sway gently. Beneath them, hidden under a thin skin of algae, Deinosuchus lies waiting. Its heartbeat slows to almost nothing. Its eyes stay open, motionless, disguised as drifting stones. It has been waiting for hours, perhaps days. The river itself has learned to move around it. Then, without warning, it strikes. The surface erupts. Water and mud explode into the air. The hadrosaur barely has time to lift its head before jaws close around its neck. The impact is thunderous, at the sound of the past itself tearing open. The great reptile thrashes, tail churning the water into chaos, but Deinosuchus does not fight. It holds. Its grip is final. With a slow twist of its body, it drags the dinosaur beneath the surface back into silence. That is how Deinosuchus fed. Not with pursuit, but with inevitability. Its name means terrible crocodile, but it wasn't quite a crocodile. It belonged to a separate branch of the crocodilian family tree, one that would eventually vanish. Yet in form and spirit, it was the ancestor of everything we fear when we look into still water. Its skin was thick, armor-plated, each scale edged with bone. Its nostrils sat high on its snout, allowing it to breathe while nearly submerged. It was a design perfected by time and unchanged for over 80 million years. What made Deinosuchus extraordinary wasn't just its size, it was its patience. It could hold its breath for nearly an hour, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Its world was one of waiting, of endless dusk beneath the surface. While other predators burned energy in the chase, Deinosuchus conserved it. It was the very definition of stillness turned to power. And in that stillness, there was something almost sacred of the terrifying beauty of control. If you stood at the edge of one of those rivers, you might never see it. The reflection of clouds would ripple across its back, disguising it completely. You might think the surface calm, the danger gone. But beneath that illusion, the ancient instinct remained, a patience older than mountains, coiled and waiting. Fossil evidence tells us that Deinosuchus lived across what is now Montana, Texas, and even New Jersey. During the late Cretaceous, much of North America was divided by a vast inland sea, the Western Interior Seaway. Along its edges lay swamps and deltas teeming with life: turtles, fish, small dinosaurs, and pterosaurs that skimmed the water for prey. Deinosuchus ruled them all. It didn't need to swim far or hunt often, it simply waited for the river to deliver food. Its jaws could open nearly 4 feet wide. Once they closed, nothing escaped. Scientists studying bite marks on dinosaur bones have found half-moon impressions, deep, precise, unmistakable. Many of these bones show signs of crushing, not cutting. That's how we know Deinosuchus didn't tear, it crushed. It was not the artist of death, but its engineer. It hunted alone. Each creature carved out its own stretch of river, perhaps 10, even 20 kilometers long. Younger individuals lived in shallower water. Older ones moved downstream into darker depths. Some may have lived over 50 years. Their growth was slow but unstoppable, each season layering more bone, more armor, more patience. Imagine its breath bubbling through the water. Imagine the slow drift of its tail across the mud. The air above the swamp hums with insects, but below there is only heartbeat and hunger. Now, picture what the river must have looked like when it moved. The reeds would bend outward, the surface would distort, and the quiet world would collapse into chaos. For a creature that spent most of its existence motionless, its moments of violence were absolute. Its diet was not limited to dinosaurs. Fossilized turtle shells have been found with fractures perfectly matching its teeth. Large fish, early crocodilians, even members of its own species, all fell victim to its ambush. Deinosuchus was not picky. The river brought what it brought, and that was enough. And yet, despite its brutality, Deinosuchus was no mistake of evolution. It was one of the most successful designs in nature. Proof that power need not move quickly to rule. It was a survivor in a world of chaos, an echo of an age when patience was the greatest weapon of all. Scientists believe Deinosuchus may have migrated seasonally, following warm currents and nesting along soft riverbanks. It likely built nests of mud and vegetation, much like modern crocodiles. Its eggs, if they were ever found, would have been the size of cannonballs, fragile shells guarding lives destined for ancient waters. There's something deeply human about imagining that. This terrible predator, this timeless hunter rising from the water not to kill but to protect. The same jaws that could crush bone could also lift an egg from danger. The same patience that served its hunt also served its children. Nature always holds both light and shadow, even in its monsters. But like all kings, Deinosuchus met its end. Around 73 million years ago, the climate began to change. The inland seas receded. River systems dried or shifted. The wetlands that had sustained it disappeared. Deinosuchus could not follow. It was too big, too specialized, too bound to the rhythm of its rivers. As the land hardened and the water thinned, its empire shrank. One by one, the great crocodiles died out. Their bones sank into silt, their teeth scattered among the reeds. The rivers moved on, erasing their trails, but their descendants remained. Every modern crocodile, every alligator basking in a swamp today, carries Deinosuchus in its blood, not just its shape, but its patience. When you watch a crocodile float motionless, eyes barely above the waterline, what you're really seeing is 80 million years of memory. A living fossil performing the same ritual of stillness, the same slow breathing, the same quiet waiting. Even the sound they make, the low vibrating rumble before a strike, is ancient. It's the voice of Deinosuchus echoing through time, a reminder that the oldest predators never truly die. There's a certain comfort in that idea, because Deinosuchus reminds us that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers beneath the surface. Sometimes it waits. In the darkness of that ancient river, time had no meaning. Each strike was a heartbeat apart from eternity, each ripple a signature of existence. The creatures that lived beside it, and the turtles, the fish, even the young dinosaurs, evolved not only around its strength, but around its silence. They learned to listen to the water, to sense the subtle tremors that meant death was near. Perhaps, if you stood there long enough, you could feel it too, the way the air tightens before it moves, the faint vibration underfoot, the pulse of something too old to name. That is the essence of Deinosuchus, the embodiment of the unseen. When it finally disappeared, the river didn't mourn. It simply kept flowing. The water that once held its reflection carried its dust downstream into new seas. In that sense, Deinosuchus never really left, and it just dissolved into the rhythm of the world. And even now, in our modern age, that rhythm remains. Every crocodile that lurks beneath a mangrove, every alligator drifting through the bayou, every quiet pool where the surface never quite seems safe. That's the inheritance of Deinosuchus. It is the ghost in the water. When you walk beside a swamp at dusk, when the air hangs thick and the insects fall silent, you might feel it. That slow awareness pressing up from below. The memory of something that watched for millennia. It doesn't need to move. It doesn't need to feed. It only needs to wait. Because that's what Deinosuchus taught the earth. That stillness is not the absence of power. It is power perfected. And so, as we leave the ancient river and drift once more toward the open sea, listen carefully. The water grows deeper. The air grows cooler. Somewhere ahead, another giant waits. Not in ambush, but in peace. The riddle of the next creature is different. It does not kill. It drifts. It endures. It carries the memory of continents across the ages. Its name is Archelon, the ancient turtle, the silent voyager of the primeval ocean. Before we meet it, let the sound of the river fade. Let the heartbeat of Deinosuchus dissolve into your own. The surface smooths, the water brightens, and in that light, the shape of a shell begins to rise. The tide pulls us outward again. Away from the murky deltas of the crocodiles, back into the open ocean where sunlight scatters like dust over an endless plain of blue. The water here is calm, deceptively calm, but beneath it moves one of the most gentle giants ever to beroam the ancient seas. Its shadow drifts slowly across the sand, a soft curve, like the outline of a drifting island. It rises. A dome, wide as a car, breaks the surface with a sigh. Water slides down the edges of its shell like liquid glass. A leathery head lifts toward the light, and eyes as deep as the sea itself blink once before closing again. This is Archelon, the ancient turtle, the quiet voyager of the late Cretaceous. It was not a predator, not a conqueror, but a survivor, a creature that learned to endure where others fought and fell. At nearly 4 meters long and weighing up to 2 tons, Archelon remains the largest turtle ever known, and yet, for all its size, it moved with the peace of a drifting cloud. It belonged to no kingdom, no territory. It followed only the rhythm of the ocean. Imagine the world it swam through. 80 million years ago, the Cretaceous Sea stretched across what is now North America, a warm inland ocean that shimmered with life. Mosasaurs hunted in the depths, Plesiosaurs glided through the shallows, and flocks of pterosaurs dived from above, their wings slicing through mist and sunlight. Among them, Archelon moved without haste, immune to their chaos. Its shell wasn't hard like that of modern turtles, it was flexible, made of a framework of bone covered in tough leathery skin. That design made it lighter, better suited for long journeys across the sea. The limbs that once walked on land had evolved into massive flippers, powerful and patient, pushing it forward one slow beat at a time. When it surfaced, it exhaled with a long, steady sigh, a sound that must have echoed like wind over the waves. Archelon lived slowly. It didn't chase. It drifted. It fed on jellyfish, soft-bodied mollusks, and whatever the currents carried its way. In a world where size often meant violence, Archelon's enormity meant serenity. Few predators dared attack it, and those that did, perhaps young mosasaurs or giant sharks, often found themselves retreating from its immense shell. Archelon survived not by fighting, but by outlasting. If you could follow one through the ancient sea, it would feel like following time itself. Its flippers beat in wide, lazy arcs. Sunlight filtered through the surface, flickering across its shell in shifting patterns of gold and green. Barnacles clung to its back like tiny passengers. Fish darted beneath its belly, using its shadow as protection. The water around it seemed to slow, as though the ocean itself recognized its calm authority. But Archelon's life was not without struggle. Every year it would make the long migration toward the coast to lay its eggs, a journey both sacred and perilous. Imagine the sight, a massive turtle emerging from the sea under a moonlit sky, dragging her heavy body across wet sand that has never known human footprints. Her movements are slow, deliberate, ancient. She digs with her back flippers, carving a deep nest, and lowers her body over it to release her eggs, fragile, perfect spheres glowing faintly in the starlight. For hours she works, alone, her breath steady against the rhythm of the tide. When it is done, she covers them gently with sand and returns to the waves, leaving behind the next generation to face whatever fate the earth decides. Those eggs would hatch months later. tiny turtles emerging into a world both beautiful and cruel. Most would never reach the sea. The beach was alive with danger, small dinosaurs, giant seabirds, and even other reptiles waiting for movement. For every 100 hatchlings, perhaps only one would survive to adulthood. But that was enough. Archelon's strength lay not in numbers, but in time. Its lineage stretched backward and forward like an unbroken breath. Fossils tell us that Archelon lived across the western interior seaway, from the warm waters of what is now South Dakota to the ancient coasts of Texas. Its bones, discovered in the late 19th century, astonished scientists. The shell alone spanned over 15 feet from tip to tip. Each flipper was longer than a human arm. Its skull, narrow and curved, bore a beak sharp enough to shear through flesh and shell. This was no passive drifter. It was a quiet force of nature, gentle but unyielding. There is something deeply human about Archelon's story. It lived slowly, peacefully, but it was not weak. It endured because it didn't fight the ocean. It became part of it. Its every breath was in sync with the tide. Its every movement was a conversation with the current. It knew the truth that modern creatures, and perhaps humans, often forget. Survival isn't always about dominance. Sometimes it's about harmony. Close your eyes and imagine drifting beside it. The water is warm. You can hear nothing but the faint hum of your heartbeat and the rhythm of its strokes. Its massive shell glides just ahead, catching the sunlight in waves of bronze and shadow. Occasionally it tilts slightly, adjusting its path with the wisdom of something that has travelled for decades without destination. It feels eternal. But even Archelon, like all ancient beings, lived within the boundaries of change. The world around it began to shift. The shallow seas that once divided continents started to recede. The climate cooled, food sources dwindled, and predators, the Mosasaurs it had once outlasted, grew larger, faster, hungrier. The great turtle faced its end not in battle, but in silence. Slowly its numbers fell. Fewer hatchlings survived. The nests grew emptier. And one day the last Archelon slipped beneath the surface, leaving only the gentle pattern of waves behind. Its bones settled into silt and stayed there, buried for 80 million years. The ocean moved on, but not without remembering. In those bones, paleontologists would one day read the story of endurance written in the language of stillness. They would trace the curves of its shell and see not just an animal, but a philosophy. Exist, but do not rush. Move, but do not conquer. Breathe and let the world breathe with you. Even now its descendants, sea turtles, carry that wisdom. When you watch a modern turtle swim, you're witnessing a whisper from the Cretaceous. The slow, rhythmic motion of its flippers, the way it rises for air, the serenity in its movement, all of it is memory. A soft echo of Archelon gliding through an ocean that no longer exists. There's an old saying among marine biologists, if the ocean dreams, it dreams of turtles. Perhaps that's true, because Archelon feels less like an animal and more like an idea, the ocean's embodiment of patience. It reminds us that even in a world of predators and chaos, gentleness can be a form of strength. In the fossil record, Archelon's remains are often found with impressions of its soft tissues, the leathery texture of its shell, the folds around its flippers. Unlike many of its contemporaries, it didn't fossilize in violent poses. It didn't die mid-hunt or mid-flight. Most were found as if they had simply drifted to the seafloor and fallen asleep, peaceful, undisturbed, as if time itself had bowed to their calm. And maybe that's why Archelon's image lingers in the imagination long after its body vanished. It represents the side of prehistory that isn't filled with roars or battles, but with silence, breath and endurance. It is the counterpoint to all that came before. Where Mosasaurs shattered the sea, Archelon soothed it. Where Deinosuchus ruled through fear, Archelon ruled through patience. Every great era needs its balance. Archelon was that balance. Now, as we drift higher in the water column, sunlight returns in threads of silver. Schools of small fish shimmer, like curtains of glass around us. The ocean feels lighter here, emptier perhaps, but not sad. The presence of Archelon lingers, invisible yet heavy, like the afterimage of something vast. Think of what it must have seen. Storms rising over ancient continents, volcanic islands glowing red under alien skies, the shadow of asteroids passing overhead, unaware of the catastrophe to come. It lived long enough to watch the world change beneath its flippers, and it endured as long as endurance was possible. That is its legacy. So when you see a turtle today, small, slow, unhurried, remember, you are looking at the living memory of an animal that outlived empires of reptiles and watched the sky darken with ash. You are seeing the calm that survived the storm. Archelon's story ends not with extinction, but with continuation. It lives in every creature that refuses to rush, in every heart that chooses stillness over struggle. The ocean's giants may have fallen, but their wisdom lingers in the smallest survivors. As we leave this part of the journey, let the water around you still again. The waves calm, the sound fades, and all that remains is the faint echo of breathing, slow, steady, patient. Because after the age of giants, the ocean began to change. Its silence grew heavy. Its warmth began to fade. The great reptiles that had ruled for millions of years would soon face the final night of their dominion. In the next chapter, we'll descend once more into darkness, into the mystery of gigantism, the force that made the sea breed giants, and the reason why it could no longer sustain them. But for now, float. Let the calm of Archelon hold you. Let its lessons sink deep, that strength can be soft, that time belongs to the patient, and that somewhere beneath the waves, an island once breathed, and the ocean remembered. The sea is quiet again. The ripples fade, the world above turns pale blue, and the light below stretches thin, dissolving into green and grey. Somewhere far beneath that stillness lies the oldest secret of all. The reason the ocean births monsters. The reason everything that enters its depth seems to grow, expand, and lose its boundaries. Why, throughout all of Earth's history, the ocean has always been the cradle of the colossal. From the trilobites of the Cambrian seas to the Mosasaurs, Plesiosaurs, Archelon, and even the whales that came millions of years later, the pattern is unmistakable. In the ocean, life grows large, unfathomably large. But why? The answer is not just science. It's poetry written in biology, physics, and time. It's the rhythm of survival under pressure, the language of the deep where everything is dictated by water, temperature, and silence. Let's start with the simplest truth. Water is liberation. On land, gravity is a constant tyrant. Every step is a negotiation with weight. Bones must bear it, muscles must lift against it. But in the ocean, that burden disappears. Buoyancy turns giants into dancers. A creature that would collapse under its own mass on land can glide effortlessly through the sea. The ocean supports its weight, inviting it to grow beyond limits. It's why a blue whale can reach 30 meters and still move with grace, while the largest land animal, the elephant, must live in careful balance with the ground. In the ocean, gravity becomes a companion, not an enemy. And so, evolution whispers to every creature beneath the surface, grow. But there is more to it. The ocean is also cold, and in coldness lies the secret to longevity. In deep water, where sunlight fades to black, temperatures drop near freezing. The metabolism of creatures slows to a near dream state. Heartbeats stretch, lifespans lengthen, and energy demands shrink. To survive there, bodies must grow large enough to store warmth, large enough to hold the energy that cold waters steal away. A giant body means a slower cooling rate. It means efficiency, a balance between size and survival. Scientists call it Bergmann's rule, the principle that animals in colder environments tend to be larger. It's why the great reptiles of the past and the whales of the present both thrived in similar conditions. Vast, dark oceans where cold pressed against every scale and bone. And yet, beyond physics and temperature, there is a deeper psychological truth, something almost spiritual. The ocean rewards stillness. It favors creatures that move slowly, that conserve, that wait. In stillness, growth becomes possible. On land, survival belongs to the swift and the restless. In the sea, it belongs to the patient. The slow rhythm of tides, the gradual drift of currents. Everything in the ocean teaches endurance. Think of the Archelon gliding across thousands of miles in a lifetime. Or the Mosasaur, drifting in ambush, its enormous body hidden beneath a skin of quiet water. These creatures were not accidents of excess. They were inevitabilities. The ocean is vast, and to survive in its emptiness, a body must be equally vast. The sea breeds scale because scale is safety. A small creature vanishes, a large one endures. But gigantism is not merely a gift, it is a trade. For every advantage of size, strength, endurance, thermal stability, there is a cost. Giants need endless food. The larger a creature grows, the more energy it must gather to sustain itself. In boom times, when plankton bloomed and fish were plentiful, the oceans could feed titans. But when the balance shifted, when climates cooled or asteroids struck or volcanoes poisoned the water, the giants fell first. Gigantism, in the end, is evolution's act of faith, and its greatest gamble. To understand this duality, imagine descending now, far deeper than before, beyond the reach of sunlight where the water turns black and heavy. This is where pressure becomes cathedral-like, a constant weight pressing from every direction. Down here, strange creatures glow in the dark, jellyfish like floating lanterns, squids with eyes the size of dinner plates, fish with jaws that unhinge like traps. Even in this abyss, the rule holds true: the deeper the darkness, the larger the dream. Here lives the giant squid, stretching longer than a school bus, its tentacles curling through water thicker than air. Here swim the colossal amphipods, crustaceans the size of a hand, and sea spiders as big as dinner plates. They are small compared to Mosasaurs or Archelon, but in their realm, the eternal night, they are titans. Pressure here does not crush them, it perfects them. The immense weight of water compresses their bodies, their movements, their metabolism, turning life itself into sculpture. It's the same rule that shaped the past. During the Mesozoic, when carbon dioxide levels were high and the world's oceans were warm and full of nutrients, the same conditions encouraged gigantism. The seas of that era were heavy with food, plankton, ammonites, small fish. Every current carried energy. For a predator like the Mosasaur or a drifter like Archelon, abundance made size possible. But there's another factor: the ocean's infinite space. On land, size must bow to terrain, to trees, mountains, gravity, and the limitations of movement. In water, there are no such walls. There are no forests to block the path, no cliffs to climb, no deserts to cross. The ocean is limitless, a world without obstacles. A creature can grow and move without end. It's the dream of freedom written in muscle and bone. Even today, whales inherit that same dream. The blue whale, the largest creature to have ever lived, embodies the ocean's promise of scale. Its tongue weighs as much as an elephant. Its heart is the size of a car, and yet it moves with the same slow serenity that Archelon once did. Its song travels hundreds of miles, vibrating through water and memory alike. When we listen to that sound, we're hearing an echo not just of whales, but of every giant that came before. The ocean has been singing to its own children for 500 million years. Gigantism is its hymn, but there's something haunting about it too, because size in the end is never enough to protect against time. The same forces that create giants eventually erase them. Every age of monsters has ended in silence. The trilobites vanished in the Cambrian collapse. The ammonites spiraled out of existence after the Cretaceous impact. The Mosasaurs and Plesiosaurs disappeared when the light of the sun vanished for years, and yet the idea of them never left. The ocean forgets nothing. It reincarnates its designs again and again, refining, reshaping, rebirthing. The ichthyosaur became the whale, the Archelon became the turtle, even the ancient crocodiles became the survivors we still see today. The shapes endure because they are right. Evolution is not a straight line, it's a circle drawn in water. Every time life collapses, it rises again from the same blueprint, streamlining, scaling, harmonizing with the sea. Gigantism isn't just biology, it's memory. It's the ocean remembering itself. If you look closely at the modern ocean, you'll still find ghosts of this phenomenon. Giant jellyfish that pulse through the deep like lost hearts. Enormous oarfish, silver ribbons longer than men, gliding near the twilight zones. Deep-sea isopods crawling over wrecks like slow-moving fossils. They are all reminders that gigantism is still alive, waiting, breathing, dreaming beneath the waves. Scientists call it deep-sea gigantism, the tendency for species living in extreme depths to grow larger than their shallow water relatives. It's not magic, it's physics. The cold slows their metabolism, the pressure slows decay, and scarcity teaches efficiency. In this economy of energy, the biggest bodies last the longest. But beneath the science, something more profound hums, a whisper of the same rhythm that has guided life since the beginning. The ocean does not make things larger for vanity. It does so because the act of growing is the act of surviving. To grow is to resist disappearance. The giants of prehistory weren't just large in body, they were large in presence. They filled the ocean's silence with purpose. They gave scale to existence itself. Without them, the sea would be smaller, not in size but in imagination. And that, perhaps, is the true legacy of gigantism. It is not about dimensions or muscle or mass. It is about wonder, the kind that makes us look into the water and feel both awe and humility, the kind that reminds us that Earth's story is vast beyond comprehension. If you listen now very closely, you can almost hear it. The ocean humming, the heartbeat of depth, the slow inhale and exhale of time itself. Every giant that ever lived, from the first ammonite to the last mosasaur, still echoes in that rhythm. Their bones dissolved, their bodies gone, but their size, their defiance, remains written in the structure of life. And yet there's irony. The ocean's greatest triumph and gigantism is also what doomed its champions. When the meteor fell 66 million years ago and darkness spread across the planet, the giants had the farthest to fall. Their vast bodies, so finely tuned to abundance, could not endure famine. The water cooled, the plankton died, and the great beasts starved quietly, sinking one by one into the dark. There were no final roars, no cries, only the sound of bubbles rising from lungs, the faint crackle of pressure as shells and bones gave way. It was the end of an age and the beginning of silence, but in that silence, the blueprint remained. The ocean never stopped making giants. It simply changed their form. Every massive creature that has come since, from whales to squid to even the quiet drift of jellyfish blooms, is a continuation of that ancient design. It's the universe's oldest story retold in new voices, that from pressure comes grace, and from darkness comes scale. So the next time you stand before the sea, when its horizon swallows the sun, and the air smells of salt and infinite distance, remember what lies beneath. Not just the fish and coral, not just the wrecks and silt, but the legacy of giants. The ocean has always been a mirror for the human soul, vast, beautiful, terrifying, and full of memory. We look into it not to see monsters, but to recognize ourselves, small yet capable of greatness. Because in every heartbeat, in every breath, in every ripple of curiosity that makes us stare into the unknown, we are echoing the same truth that shaped the giants of the past. To survive, we must grow, and to grow, we must first learn to move with the sea. The story of gigantism is not just about biology, it's about the will to expand beyond fear, to take the space the world gives us and fill it with life. The ocean has always understood this. It is the original teacher of magnitude, of patience, balance, and humility. Every wave that breaks on the shore is an echo of that ancient lesson. Now, as the lights and buds of the shallow world fade behind us, we begin to descend once more. Ahead lies the great darkness, the silence that followed when the giants fell. The Cretaceous sun dims, the temperature drops, and the earth itself begins to tremble. Something vast is coming, not another creature, but an ending. The age of giants will end not with war, but with light swallowed by dust. And in the next chapter, we'll watch that moment, when the heavens themselves turned against the ocean, and all that was large, beautiful, and breathing was silenced. But before that fall, linger, a little longer here, in this space between knowledge and awe. Let the water press gently against your skin. Feel the gravity dissolve. You are floating at the place where size was born, where silence and time conspired to make the impossible real. This is the ocean's memory, and it remembers everything. The sea begins to dim, the shimmer of the surface weakens. It feels as if the sun itself has drawn a deep breath and forgotten to exhale. The air grows cooler, the light turns copper, then grey, then a bruised shade of purple. On the horizon, the world trembles. A single point of brightness appears, brighter than any dawn, and in that instant, the age of giants begins to end. 66 million years ago, the sky burned. The asteroid struck near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula, a mountain of rock and iron moving faster than sound itself. It tore through the atmosphere and ignited the sky. In less than a second, it released more energy than every volcano, every lightning storm, every heartbeat the Earth had ever known. The impact carved a crater 100 miles wide. Everything within thousands of kilometers evaporated. Forests burst into flame. Waves higher than cities rose and ran outward across the seas. The ocean that had once given birth to monsters now became their grave. For a few terrible hours, light returned, not from the sun, but from fire. Meteors of molten rock rained down through the atmosphere, lighting the surface of the sea with crimson sparks. Whole coastlines boiled, coral reefs shattered, and in the shallows where life had once bloomed, the water hissed like steam. Far below, in the deep blue that had always been refuge, the giant stirred. A mosasaur glides upward, confused by the sudden brightness, its eyes wide in the flickering red light. An Archelon drifts near the surface, its shell glowing faintly with the reflected flame. For millions of years, these creatures had ruled without question, but now their kingdom is collapsing around them. When the shockwaves reach them, they don't come as sound, but as force, a pressure that tears through the water like the voice of an angry god. The ocean itself flexes, folding upon itself. Fish die by the billions. Waves race outward from the point of impact, carrying the debris of the land into the open sea. The very salt of the ocean thickens with ash. Then comes the second death, the one that doesn't shout. Dust rises into the sky, billions of tons of it. It spreads around the planet like a shroud. Within days, sunlight disappears. The world turns cold, silent, and grey. Photosynthesis stops. The tiny plankton, the foundation of every ocean food chain, die first. Their bodies fall through the dark water like snow. The giants above, the Mosasaurs, the Plesiosaurs, even the calm and ancient Archelon, feel the hunger begin. For a few weeks, perhaps even months, they endure. Their massive bodies store energy, their lungs still strong, their instincts sharp. They chase what little prey remains, smaller fish, squid, anything that moves. But as the cold deepens, the prey vanish. The ocean becomes empty. One by one, the giants slow. A plesiosaur, once elegant and tireless, now drifts weakly near the surface, its long neck rising, one last time into the grey light before sinking forever. A mosasaur lies motionless on the seabed, its flippers twitching in a final reflex of life. Even the mighty Archelon, the floating island of calm, grows still. The water around it is colder than it has ever known. It breathes one final time, air escaping its lungs in a single silver cloud of bubbles. Then it sinks, slow, peaceful, heavy as memory. The ocean doesn't roar, it doesn't mourn, it simply absorbs. Above, the surface freezes in some places. In others, it burns. The skies remain black for years. Acid rain falls into the seas, turning them sour. The chemistry of life itself rewrites overnight. When the dust finally begins to settle, when the faint light of the sun dares to return, it shines on a planet that does not recognize itself. 80% of species are gone. The dinosaurs on land, the flying reptiles of the air, and nearly all the great reptiles of the sea, erased in the span of a heartbeat. The silence that follows is unlike anything the Earth has ever known. Imagine standing on the coast of that new world. The air smells of ash and salt. The tide carries no sound but the faint clink of dead shells. The waves, once alive with the shapes of mosasaurs and turtles and fish, now roll across emptiness. The horizon is a haze of grey. Even the wind seems afraid to move. But beneath the surface, life does not vanish entirely. In the deepest trenches, in the cracks of hydrothermal vents, bacteria survive. Tiny, unseen, invincible. They feed on minerals instead of sunlight. Around them, small crustaceans, worms, and plankton begin again. The ocean, in its own quiet way, is already rebuilding. It will take millions of years, but the rhythm returns. Slowly, new creatures rise from the ashes of the old, smaller at first, humbler, fragile. But the seed of every giant still sleeps in their genes. Evolution never forgets its successes. It simply hides them, waiting for the right moment to bloom again. That's the secret of extinction. It's never complete. The giants may die, but the pattern remains. The ocean holds their memory the way the sky holds starlight, ancient but still shining. Even now, when we dive into deep water, we pass through layers of that memory. The pressure against our skin, the echo of currents, the way the light bends and fades, all of it shaped by worlds that came before us. Every molecule of seawater has touched the bones of giants. Every wave carries dust from their shattered age. The death of the Mesozoic ocean was not just the end of species, it was the end of an era of abundance, of warmth, of endless sunlight. The Earth entered a colder rhythm, one that favoured the small, the adaptable, the quiet. Mammals rose, birds replaced the winged reptiles, sharks reclaimed their dominance. But something of the old world remained in the deep, a kind of pulse, faint but constant. In 1811, on the cliffs of Lyme Regis, a young fossil hunter named Mary Anning uncovered the skull of a creature that no one had ever seen before. Its teeth were sharp, its eye sockets vast. The scientists of her day couldn't yet name it, but she had touched a survivor of the Mesozoic sea, the first glimpse of the ichthyosaur. It was as if the ocean, after millions of years of silence, had chosen to whisper its secret to her hands. From that moment on, we began to remember. Each fossil unearthed since then, each rib, tooth and shell, has been another piece of that lost song. Through them, we've learned not only how the giants lived, but how they died, and how the sea carried on without them. It's tempting to see their extinction as tragedy, but perhaps it was simply a turning of the page, a necessary stagnance before the next verse. The ocean has always spoken in cycles. It creates, it destroys, it creates again. What feels like an ending to us is only a pause in its eternal conversation with the sky. Still, there's something unbearably human about wanting them back. When we imagine a mosasaur gliding through the blue, or an Archelon rising like an island from the deep, we're not just dreaming of monsters, we're dreaming of scale, of a time when life dared to be impossible. Maybe that's why their fossils move us so deeply, because they prove that the impossible once existed and that it may exist again. Picture the final moments of the giants as if you were there, floating just above them in the dark water. The world above burns, but here the ocean glows faintly with the last sparks of life. You see silhouettes drifting past, a plesiosaur, a mosasaur, a cloud of dying fish. The light fades, the temperature drops, the water grows still, then nothing, not a sound, not a motion, not even the echo of a breath. For thousands of years, the ocean stays that way, black, motionless, endless. Then one day, a small ripple disturbs the surface. A fish no larger than your hand rises from the deep. It breathes, it moves, it lives, life has returned. That tiny motion is the ocean's promise, that even after the fall of empires, after the silence of extinction, it will find a way to begin again. The giants are gone, but the sea that made them is still here. It has simply shifted shape, waiting for another dawn. When you think of extinction, don't imagine fire and death. Imagine sleep, a long, deep sleep beneath the waves. Because that's what the ocean does. It dreams. And in its dreams, the giants never stop swimming. They glide through endless darkness, past reefs of mud memory and forests of coral made of time. Their shapes move just beyond the reach of light, vast, serene, eternal. Sometimes, if you stand by the shore at night and listen carefully, when the waves roll and the moon breaks the water's surface, you might feel something stir beneath. A faint shadow, a whisper of movement. It isn't imagination, it's remembrance. The ocean remembering itself. Every tide that comes and goes is a resurrection. Every wave that falls is the sea's way of saying they were here. They mattered, and through me they still are. That's why we look to the ocean and feel both fear and calm. Because somewhere inside we know it holds the memory of everything that has ever lived and everything that will live again. So as the dust of the Cretaceous settles and the planet exhales for the first time in centuries, imagine that quiet moment, the stillness after the storm, when the light returns to the surface of the sea. No roars, no battles, no giants, only ripples, sunlight, and the faint echo of a heartbeat beneath the waves. The age of reptiles has ended, but the story of the ocean is far from over. For in the silence that followed, something new began to breathe, and in our final chapter, we will meet what remains, the descendants, the survivors, the small and stubborn heirs of that ancient kingdom. Creatures that still carry in their blood and bone the memory of the giants that came before them. They are the living proof that nothing in nature is ever truly lost, only transformed. But for now, rest here in the dim light. Feel the water still. The fire is gone. The sky is clear again. The world begins to heal. Above you, sunlight spreads like gold dust through the water. Below you, the bones of the giants rest in quiet rows. Between them, life, small, fragile, patient, begins again. The sea takes a slow breath, and the story continues. Dawn returns to the sea. It begins quietly and not with thunder or flame, but with a shimmer. A pale band of light spills across the horizon, soft as breath. The waves rise gently, as though the ocean itself has just awakened from a long sleep. The age of monsters is gone, but the sea is never truly empty. Its silence is only a pause between heartbeats. Beneath the surface, life stirs again. Tiny plankton bloom, painting the water green with the first colours of renewal. Small fish weave between them. Crustaceans scuttle over coral that has begun to rebuild. And deeper still, slow shadows move. Not giants, not yet, but the beginnings of what will come. The ocean has started to dream again. Time, as always, becomes the sea's servant. Millions of years pass, continents drift, mountains reigns where waves once rolled. But in every tide the memory of the ancient giants remains, reshaped, reborn. A crocodile floats in a river delta, its eyes half closed, its breath slow. A sea turtle drifts through warm Pacific waters, rising for air every few minutes, its flippers beating like the slow wings of time. A whale, vast and gentle, glides through the depths, its song echoing for hundreds of miles, a hymn to the patience of creation. They are the heirs of the Mesozoic seas, carrying in their bones the ghosts of Deinosuchus, Archelon, and Ichthyosaur. Each breath they take is an echo of an age that refused to disappear. Because extinction, as the ocean proves, is not erasure. It is transformation. Every creature alive today, from the smallest plankton to the largest whale, carries within it a spark of the same ocean that once gave birth to giants. Our blood still tastes of salt because we came from that water. Our cells still carry the rhythm of its tides. When we breathe deeply, our hearts beat in the same slow pulse as the waves. We are, all of us, descendants of the sea, and the sea remembers. It remembers the thunder of the Mosasaurs' strike, the elegant dance of the Plesiosaurs' neck, the spiral grace of the Ichthyosaur gliding through twilight. It remembers the soft, slow drift of Archelon, the patient stillness of Deinosuchus waiting beneath the reeds. It remembers the impact, the fire, the silence, and the long rebuilding that followed. The ocean holds it all not as tragedy, but as continuity. Every wave that breaks upon the shore carries dust from that story. Every shell that lies buried in the sand is a letter from that lost world. When you stand by the water and really listen, you can almost hear them. The faint hum of the deep, the rhythmic surge of the tide, it's the heartbeat of time itself. Perhaps that's why the sea soothes us, why its sound calms our racing thoughts and its horizon draws our eyes farther than we can see. Because somewhere in our deepest memory, we know this place. We remember the quiet before the storm, the warmth of salt water, the weightlessness of safety. We come from the ocean, and to it one day we return. That's the final lesson the giants left behind, that all life is cyclical. Birth, growth, collapse, renewal. The ocean teaches it endlessly. The reptiles that ruled its depths are gone, but the pattern remains. Vastness followed by stillness, destruction followed by creation. The earth never forgets its own rhythm. It only changes its melody. Now, in the quiet present, the ocean sings a new verse. One written not in thunder, but in whispers. The whales sing it in blue tones that travel across hemispheres. The turtles hum it in the hush of coral reefs. Even the smallest waves murmur it as they fall upon our shores. Close your eyes for a moment and drift with that thought. Picture the Archelon gliding under soft moonlight, the Ichthyosaur vanishing into blue shadows, the Mosasaur's tail sweeping through sunbeams. Their forms dissolve into water, into light, into memory, but the feeling of them remains, the vastness, the peace, the mystery. When you next hear the ocean, in a shell, a storm, or the slow rhythm of your own breath, know that it's not just sound, it's history whispering. The same voice that once sang to the giants now sings to you. You are part of that same story. You are a continuation of that same patience. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, let the sea hold you again. Let its rhythm steady your pulse, its silence cradle your mind. And if dreams come, let them be blue and endless. Let them be full of slow shadows, moving through the light. Let them be the dreams of the ocean remembering its children. Because somewhere, deep beneath the waves, time is still breathing. And in that breath, soft, eternal, infinite, the giants still swim. You've been listening to Dark Ages Unveiled. If this journey brought you calm, leave your light among ours and a like, a comment, a quiet word, or simply rest. The ocean is still telling stories. Good night.